Alrighty, we are back. Avocados, how's it hanging? Sorry, how's it hanging? We are, as the title suggests, we are going to be creating a lab live. Now, I'll flip over here to this. So we're going to be building a hack smarter machine live for all to see. And I don't have a ton of plans for this. I have a little bit of an idea of how I want to, talk it out and frame this machine, but really I'm just going to be building this live with the rest of you. So I am open to ideas, open to critiques and ideas on how to make this machine, but it's going to be it's going to be both a journey for the both of us here. So I think it's going to be a multi-part stream because I don't think building a lab in one stream is great. So we can break it out into a couple of check boxes for part one. Part one. And just make sure I have, say, I want to pop out chat. Make sure I can see everything. Make sure I look all right. Maybe I'll shoot the camera that way. All right. So we're going to do two things today for part one. The goal here is first we're going to map or like draw out. That's not a D. Draw our attack path. And we are also going to start configuration. And to be honest, this step, the first step, is going to be the hardest. Just figuring out what we want to do and like how we want the player of this box to go about the machine. And that's the most fun part, so it should be a blast. The config is going to be something, probably should be its own video or its own stream because I'm also very new to it. I'm going to be doing it obviously through ActSmarter, so they use a platform called CourseStack. On the last stream, I blanked on that, but CourseStack is their platform of choice, which is essentially just a AWS front end for starting, stopping, creating VMs. So that's going to be the plan for today. We're going to map out and draw our attack path, and we are also going to, if we have time, start the config. So let me turn on some tunes here, and we'll get off to the races. Any questions here before we get going? Again, I have a little bit of idea of what I want to do. This machine is called Duet, so it's going to be a multi-machine lab. We're going to have two machines like this. We're gonna have like a workstation and a domain controller, and somewhere in the middle will be our Kali machine. Let's go. Alrighty. Which will have access to both of these. So I don't think this one's gonna be really beginner friendly. I don't think that it should be crazy tough. All my boxes have been pretty beginner friendly because that's honestly where I'm at in my cyber career. So really no need to go overboard with the complexity at this point. But we're gonna have this Kali machine. It's all gonna be on the internal network. So that's where the friendliness comes in. This is all kind of on the same internal network. So with us being on the internal network, we can access both the workstation and we can access both the domain controller. But I don't think starting with creds is the way I want to do it. A lot of Active Directory boxes these days do start with creds. I don't think I want to do that. I think the first thing I want to do, and something I learned in Heath Adams' course, the PEH, Practical Ethical Hacker, is LLM and R poisoning. poisoning. So basically just running responder and grabbing a hash. So I think I want to do the attack path first, and then from there go on and map out the technical details. Or maybe I could just do both of them at the same time. So with LMNR poisoning, I believe it comes default in the Windows config. I don't think we have to change much other than just like set up a domain and make sure hashes are flowing through. But we're going to need to set up I think I want to actually move my camera around here. Move me like that. There we go. So I'm a little bit more in frame. So with LMNR poisoning, we need some sort of script for whoever our user account is. We need a script that is constantly running, constantly sending out those random authentication requests where it'll grab the NTL MV2 hash. Script to send out hash. And I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to do that. To be honest, a lot of this process is just going to be asking ChatGPT or asking Google. I don't know how to do this off the top of my head, and we have those resources for a reason. So first step, LMNR poisoning. So this will get us a decent amount of leverage. So this will get us some sort of creds. So LMNR poisoning 2 is going to be cracking that hash, I guess. Or maybe that's assumed. We can just say that's assumed. So LMNR poisoning equals Foothold. So I think the Foothold should be onto the workstation. That makes sense. Before going to the domain controller. So I guess we can map out a few users. And I actually have some pre-configured usernames here, which I would love to share. So we have Larry Lockstein. All original names. We have three users on the box. Larry Lockstein, Alice Jones, not as creative, unfortunately, and Billy Simpleton. Clearly, I lost my creative juices after Larry Lockstein. Dark Root Cybersecurity, how's it going? How are we doing on this lovely evening? Lovely Thursday evening. So we have these 3 users, and I don't think this box needs more than that. I think if we were doing a more complex multi-machine lab, more than 3 users would be all right. But for now, I think we're just going to make one of these users a DA. So let's have, just in order, Billy Simpleton will be the DA. I think it's a little more realistic to have a user account that is an administrator, that is a domain administrator, as opposed to the actual administrator account being used. Obviously, both are sufficient in the real world, but I think actual users being the administrators sits a little better with me. And then Alice Jones, Larry Lockstein can be our Foothold user. So this is going to be the LLMNR poisoning user. And then Alice Jones, I don't know exactly how I want to use Alice yet, but I think Alice is going to be the middle or the bridge between our Foothold and our privilege escalation. So Alice needs some sort of privilege escalation vector to get to Billy, but we can figure that out later. So we have our users. we have the first step, which is LM&R poisoning Foothold as Larry on, and we'll say on what workstation, which is WS01. Okay. So that was a lot of explanation, but we really haven't done much. Just the first step here, LM&R poisoning, is going to be our full. That's what we established. We established what kind of network we're going to have, just drawing out really simply, what does our LAN look like? How many machines are there? How is the player, the user, you, interact with the lab? How do they interact with the CTF? And where do flags live? And I think flags, I actually haven't thought about flags. Obviously, administrator is going to live on the DC. So I don't know if I should put a user flag on the workstation or on the DC. I guess we'll get there when we get there. So first up, LM&R poisoning. And we're going to have Larry be a local user? Or maybe a domain user. And again, a lot of this is just coming up from scratch, just thinking about realistic attack paths. I really don't have much planned out for this box. Like, it's a very interesting idea here, building this out in public, but this gonna be fun. Glory, how we doing? It's good to see you. I'm glad you could make it tonight. How are we doing? I think I want to make Larry local. Larry local. Let's have doing well. That's great. That is great. What are we getting into? Well, I don't know if the stream title actually says it. What is it? What is the stream title? How can I figure this out? It's like a Twitch command. Hold on. That didn't work. Oh well. Well, what we're doing here is we're going to be building a Hack Smarter lab from the ground up with the stream here. So it's going to be a multi-part stream series and probably a video series. I'll probably convert this, cut it up, and make it a video series as well. But basically, we're just building a lab from scratch, and this will eventually be posted on Hack Smarter. So obviously not the most competitive, since you're going to see me building this. You're going to know what the flags are. You're going to know what the user credentials are and all that stuff. But I think it's, a lot of people have asked me, like, how do you build a lab? How do you build a CTF? Because obviously I've made a couple that Tyler Ransby has gone over, but I think this is a unique perspective, just looking at it from the creator side of things instead of the player side. So that is that's what we're getting into today. That's where we're at, and you came in a good time because we haven't done much. We just established our first step, which is LM&R poisoning, and I'm gonna say Larry equals local on workstation 01. So like workstation 01, DC 01. I think that the TCM Pentest bundle is worth it. It's like 1,100 right now until February 28th. What does the TCM Pentest bundle encapsulate? What's all included in that? Because 1,100 sounds really expensive for TCM at least. All their certs before have been like $500. So let me know what's included in that bundle. Yeah, let me know and I will give a more insightful opinion. Anywho, Larry's gonna be local on workstation 1. So I don't think that's warranted enough for a flag. I think the user should do one more thing before they get the local flag. So Larry gets local access on workstation 1. And I don't know if I want to do like a local Windows privesc or some sort of AD misconfig. I think I'll do like an SE. I think like SE, either SE backup or SE impersonate. I did SE backup for one of my other machines, so I'm gonna do SE impersonate, which isn't really that realistic because realistically only service accounts should have SE impersonate. But for the sake of the CTF, it is okay. So Larry has SE impersonate privilege, which basically just means system shell. Thanks in advance. Yeah, of course. Just let me know what's in that bundle, and I'll let you know. So I think we're off to a pretty good start here. We have LM&R poisoning as our foothold, and we obviously have to script that out and see what that looks like. But LNR poisoning, we're gonna have Larry's NTL MV2 hash fly across the network. We're gonna intercept it in Kali with responder. Oops. With responder. And we can crack that hash with hashcat, John, whatever you please. And then once we get local access, I don't think I want Larry to actually be a domain user. I think it's a little more realistic if he is a local user with SE impersonate as opposed to an AD user with SE impersonate. So we'll have him stay as local. And then he has SE impersonate priv, which we can get a system shell. So next is going to be, what can we do with that system shell? Are we able to pivot to the main controller? What can we do with system shell? So I'm going to say system is equal to a really cool attack actually that I learned again in PH. A lot of this is going to be modeled off of Heath Adams' PH, and that course is a token impersonation. And I've never used it beyond that lab. Like between all the exams and all the CTFs I've done, I don't think I've ever used token impersonation. So I think I want to make that. I think I want to do token impersonation. And what that looks like, this is a long time ago when I learned this, but token impersonation essentially is you have a domain user logging in on the local workstation, and with system privileges on that local workstation, you're able to impersonate the domain user and run commands as if you were them. So this gets scary when a domain administrator, so like say domain administrator logs into this local workstation, and then from a system shell in that local workstation, you can then in turn run commands as the domain administrator on the domain. So obviously this is a pretty big vulnerability, and I think it's one that is somewhat realistic. All right, Gloria, you said PJPT, PNPT, port, which is their OSINT, PWPA, and PWPP, and 24 months access and 2 vouchers for each cert. Wow. That's a lot. I mean, the PJPT and the PNPT alone are like $800, I think. So I think you're getting a good deal. 24 months access. Question for you. Do you think that 24 months is going to be enough to do all that? I mean, what if we remember from last stream, I actually still have it here. Let's see. Oops. Let me scroll over here. Where is my schedule? Here it is. So here's my schedule. So I did PJPT in 2 months, PNPT in 3 months. So that's 5 months right there for those two. I mean, I guess if you're only grinding certs, I think that 24 months is good. But if I were you, I'd be worried about if you can do all those certs in that time. But I think from a financial standpoint, I think that it's good. Though I would double check and see what kind of courses you get with them, because there's certainly going to be overlap. Like PJPT and PNPT have similar courses. PNPT and Port have similar courses. I'm sure that PWPA and PWPP have similar courses. So I think from a certification standpoint, it's worth it, but from a knowledge standpoint, I would double check and see how many overlap courses there are, and if you're okay with taking overlap courses for the sake of getting the cert, if that makes sense. Calypso's welcome to the stream. Appreciate you checking in. Found that I could get access to PowerShell through Citrix Workspace. We have a file explorer app published, and I was able to create a batch file that launched PowerShell. Yeah, that's not good to see. I actually heard, I don't know what I was listening to. I think I was listening to a podcast or something where Citrix Workspace is kind of like a central hub for pen testers to look at and red teamers to look at, because it can just do so much stuff, and like too much stuff, including the example you just mentioned. But that's a good find. Was that just exhilarating to find? And I'm curious, what was the aftermath of that? Like, how did that, did you report that, or what did that look like? I think when it breaks down, it comes down to 3 courses technically, because OSINT and PJPT encapsulates into the PNPT. Yeah. That's, I mean, it depends on you. It depends on if you are fine with, and it'll realistically, it'll help you go through all those certs faster because it's just going to be repeat content. But it's up to you if you think if you're okay with repeat content, I guess. Okay, where were we? Yes, so we have the system shell on workstation 01, and I want to do token impersonation. I don't know. I think this is pretty easy to actually implement from a box perspective. I think I just need to log in as one of our users. I guess this is where Alice Jones comes in. Token imp. Login to workstation 01 as Alice. I reported it and nothing changed. CMD is blocked though. I didn't push further since I'm not in red teaming role yet. I mean, that's a shame. I think, was it just the bureaucracy of everything? Like, was it the politics that got in the way of it not changing and not being patched? I mean, CMD being blocked is good, but I feel like PowerShell is a little more valuable, a little bit more impactful. I understand you not pushing further though. Like, you definitely don't want to overstep your boundaries and have something happen that isn't ideal. It's a shame that they, like, what was the mood after you reported it? Were they upset? Were they frustrated? Were they happy, impressed? I feel like if someone reported that to me, I'd be very impressed and would want to reward them somehow for finding that kind of vulnerability. But I'm definitely biased in saying that. So to implement token impersonation, we at some point, I don't know when we're doing this, but at some point we have to log in to that workstation, that local workstation on a domain account, which is going to be Alice in our scenario here. So what can we do then? So after we can get shell, or I guess RCE as domain user Alice. I ran out of room. Alice. Other prioritizations were a large health system. Citrix team got hammered with Epic migrations. Yeah. Our workspace app hasn't been updated on our workstation since October of last year. Yeah, and that's the tough thing with the whole health industry and security. They don't mesh well because you need those systems to be up all the time, which means they can never go down for any sort of patching or security updates. Like working security in the healthcare industry is so tough. I feel for you there. It's not an easy job because you're always going to have other prioritizations. Like you're never going to be number one on the list, and that's the reality of the industry, and it's tough as a security first person. Okay, RCE and as domain user Alice. So what do we want Alice to have? What do we want Alice to do? I think from this point, I think it can be pretty simple. I think that this path alone is pretty tough from a beginner standpoint. I want this to be an easy box. So I think just maybe one or two more steps till domain admin. And I still don't know where I'm going to put flags. It's not a great, there's not a great spot to put flags here. I mean, maybe this could be a flag. I don't know. Maybe like right here. Like in the system, like in the local user directory, local admin directory rather, on a local machine. We'll figure that out later. Those details don't really matter, but just things I think about when creating these kind of boxes. So we have RCE as the user Alice. And Alice will have like winrm, I think makes sense. WinRM. So if the user pleases, they can WinRM into the domain controller and poke around there. WinRM in DCO1. Oh gosh. Delete DCO1. And I think we do two more steps here. So for step 6, I think the easiest step here and the one that's most common is going to be some sort of DACL vulnerabilities. Like this is like your generic write, your reset password. I did a lot of this on the welcome machines, or it was welcome and building magic. If you guys played those machines, I was a huge fan of DACL, and I think I'm gonna bring it back here. Because either I do DACL, so this is kind of the critical step where you have to get creative. Because it can be either DACL, which is really easy to do, really easy, and it's fun as a user as well. DACL, you can do Windows Pervesc, generic Windows Pervesc, but it's an Active Directory box, so I don't think Windows Pervesc really makes sense. You can do like some sort of hash dump. So that's terrible handwriting, but trust me, that says hash dump. For example, one of I forget which machine it was. I think it was Building Magic, where I had the user have like SE backup privileges, which is kind of akin to Windows privilege escalation, but they had these privileges and they hash dump, and then they can get the domain admin hash that way. But I don't really like that, and I really don't like Windows privilege. So I think DACL, as common as it is in CTFs, I think it's the best solution here for us. So we'll say DACL. That's bad handwriting. DACL from Alice to, and what did I say? Billy, the Billy. And Billy's going to be a DA, so that's kind of game over. So let's say DACL could be just like, we could do something fancy here where we're using like doing like a shadow attack or shadow, what's it called? Shadow whisker attack? Or shadow credential attack using a tool called Pie Whisker. I get those mixed up. But with DACL, I mean, it can be really anything. Shadow credential, yeah. It could be like, I think just generic right, something simple. Because again, beginner level box, don't want people to overcomplicate it. Generic right on Billy, and then super simple. Should be able to just change his password or something like that. And then it's just win as Billy. Really not much after that. Win as Billy. So here is our, let me zoom out. There we go. Here's our full attack path here. Let me know how you guys think this sounds, okay? So we're going to start with no credentials on our Kali machine. We will be on the internal network, so we're simulating an internal pen test here. And we're going to run responder to obtain an LMNR, to perform LMNR poisoning to obtain a NTL MV2 hash as Larry. After cracking and spraying those credentials against our two machines, we find that we authenticate locally. So that would actually be an interesting interesting caveat here to point 2 is they're gonna have to do like netexec blah 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 dash dash local. Oh my gosh, handwriting is not with me today. Dash local, I think it's local auth, which doesn't seem like a big deal, but it can kind of, I've certainly found myself in times where I'm missing one netexec flag or I'm missing one tiny thing in a command, and it's the reason why I am stuck for 2 hours. So we have LMNR poisoning, so that will give us the hash. Then we can authenticate as Larry on workstation 1, but not on the domain controller. And it's important that Larry is a local user. I don't want him to be a domain user. And from that, we can do some basic Windows privesc. So we see we have SC impersonate privilege, and then we can get a system shell from that. So SC impersonate privilege, that's just going to be a, oh gosh, I don't know where to draw it. Go up here. I'm going to draw a potato or potato attack. Let's see if how's that look? How's my potato? That's pretty good, no? That's pretty good. Okay. So that's impersonate, potato attack, and we can get a system shell on workstation 01. You like LMNR poisoning? Really see that in CTF I've done? Yeah, and I don't know why, because I feel like it's super common on real pen tests. And of course, I have no experience with that. But from what I hear and like podcasts I listen to, books I read, I think LMNR poisoning is kind of up there with one of the number 1 or number 2 misconfigurations in default Active Directory. And maybe it's not as common anymore, but at least when I was doing the course with Heath Adams, he was really harping on how common this was. So, and it should be pretty easy to implement as well. I just have to do some sort of script with like a while loop or something like that. Maybe some automated task as well that will send out those hashes. But anywho, we have a system shell on our workstation 01. So system shell workstation 01, which is good. I think that maybe that's where I'll put the flag. So I'll move over here. Flags. User will be in user will be in like C users administrator, and then user.text, which is kind of, this handwriting is horrible. Actually horrible. Trust me, that's the C users directory. I think that'll be user, and then root will just be normal domain admin. So here and here. Hey there, I have a question. To pass the PNPT, do I have to root the domain controller, or do I have to find enough vulnerabilities in the network? So to pass the PNPT, you do need to compromise the entire domain. I think they have that on their website as well. Yeah, the objective is to root the DC, essentially, get domain administrator. But it's also to find all the vulnerabilities that you can. I mean, that's the whole gist of a pen test. You want to find as many vulnerabilities as possible in the least amount of time possible to provide the most amount of value to your client. So to answer your question, yes, you have to do both of those. Though, assuming you get domain admin, that should be sufficient with the vulnerabilities you find to get to domain admin. That should be sufficient enough in your report. Anywho, back to our path here. So we have 7 steps. We left off at getting system on our local machine on workstation 01. And I think this, again, similar to Element-R, I don't think this is very common, seeing token impersonation here. I feel like token impersonation isn't that common on CTFs. I don't know if I've ever seen it. So to trigger token impersonation, we need to log in as a domain user, which will be Alice in our case. So we should find the impersonated token, then use it to get RCE as the domain user of Alice, who can, well, I guess we wouldn't be able to win RM in if we're just impersonating the token. But oh, I didn't think about this. So when we're impersonating Alice's token, we're doing it from like a Meterpreter shell or a Mimicat shell or something like that. So we're not really using or finding Alice's credentials as much as we are just running commands in that context of Alice. So I guess we just get a reverse shell. Because I'm thinking how are we going to run Bloodhound? Like, we need Alice's credentials to run Bloodhound, or to pull down Bloodhound information to then find that there's actually a DACL vulnerability. So I guess we need another step here. We need something between, we need a way to get, need to obtain Alice creds. Getting Bloodhound data from Windows. I mean, I guess, yeah, I guess you could, like, you could upload Sharphound and then run it that way, but it's really not that elegant. I'm personally was never a fan of that. I always loved doing it remotely through netexec or one of the impacted tools. So yeah, I guess in theory you're right. We could just, with our rev shell as Alice, we could upload Sharphound on the domain controller and then go from there. But I don't know how much I love that. I think I want some sort of like sneaky way to get Alice's creds. Now that I think about it more, Once we have the system shell on the local machine, you just hash dump and get Alice's hash, right? I'm not wrong in thinking about that. It's like right here. Just let me zoom. So right here, when we get our system shell via SC impersonate privilege, can we not just hash dump? Like, that works. Yeah. The problem I have with that is I want it to be token impersonation. Like I want token impersonation to be the method of pivoting. If you can just run a hash dump as the system shell and get Alice's hash, because Alice is going to have to log into the machine. Alice is going to have to log into the workstation 01 for that interactive token to be there, to be present, so that token impersonation works. So I don't know if there's a way to, let's write this down. So to prevent hash dump, like we're just gonna need a way to prevent the hash dump, right? If I'm thinking about this correctly. To protect this attack path, we need to ensure that the system shell either can't dump hashes at all or can't get Alice's hash to protect this attack path. And this is kind of why I love building boxes. It makes you think about all the attacks that are possible and maneuvering and configuring things in such a way that guides the user through where you want them to go. So you kind of have to patch certain things and let other things slide on the machine based on what you want the attack path to be. Trackman did a Valentine's Day room using JWT token impersonation by altering your account's user role to give themselves admin privilege. It was a web app room. Not sure if that would help with any ideas. I do like that. I've always loved JWT, like, or cookie token impersonation. I think it's such a cool attack. Honestly, I wish I played the Try Acme Valentine's Day room. Unfortunately, I was busy, but but I wish I played those. I wish I did more Try Acme, to be honest. The platform's great. Yeah, so with the, like you said, it's kind of like a web app, so I don't know if it'd be applicable in this scenario. Though that does give me good ideas for the future. I think if people enjoy, like if you guys enjoy watching me think out what and creating the lab live, and this phase of the creation isn't as it's not as cool in my opinion, because we're not actually configuring things. Like on my other monitor, I have the two machines ready, just essentially scrapped Windows servers machines, and they're ready to be configured. And that's going to be the cool part. That's going to be the interesting part. But I think thinking out is pretty important as well. So part 2 of this stream is going to be a lot more interesting. And that's where we're going to get into the nitty gritty details of actually configuring these machines to do what we want them to do. As such, I don't know if we can do, like, is there a way where we can prevent the hash dump on Alice? If we can get an answer to that question, then our attack path is maintained. If we can't prevent this, then we may have to rethink it. But I'm pretty sure there's a way to prevent this hash dump. So I think we're okay, but we're just gonna have to remember that when we're actually configuring the room to make sure, or the lab rather. I was thinking of try-hackery rooms, that's why I said room, but is there any way we prevent pass the hash? Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, I'm saying if to prevent pass the hash and even cracking the Alice hash, this dump. So remember, we're getting system on workstation 01. So we have to completely prevent the dump of workstation 01 hashes for Alice. For all the other users, it doesn't matter because remember we already have Larry. Like we're going to be able to crack his hash, his net NTLMV2 hash, and that's kind of going to be the only user on workstation 01. But to create the token impersonation, we have to log in to workstation 01 as the domain user of Alice, disabling NTLM authentication on Kerberos. No, because we need LMNR poisoning. I think they run on the same technology. Like, I think we need NTLM authentication to be enabled for LMNR to work. I think. I'm not 100% sure on that. But that's a good idea. But the more I think about it, I'm sure there's a way we can actually do this. I'm gonna have to look it up during part 2 of the stream. We're gonna look this up and we're gonna see if we can actually do this. Let's see. We're 50 minutes in. All right, I think we're gonna sketch out the rest of this and then go over some other details, and then we'll wrap it up for part 1. But assuming, well, let's keep going down this attack path. So assuming that we can prevent the hash dump of Alice, and we can ensure that the user is forced to use token impersonation, then we get RCE as Alice. And we need to, I guess, like you said, sorry, we can do this in 2 different ways. We could, in theory, just upload Sharphound to, I'm gonna write this out. We could just upload Sharphound and run it, and that's how we collect Bloodhound data. Or we can create a nifty way to get Alice's hash or her credentials and use those creds. So creds via, and then any like Bloodhound ingester tool. It's like netexec, Bloodhound, Python Bloodhound, Bloodhound Python. I forget the tool, but I'm a big fan of netexec. I'll just throw in netexec there. So I guess again, it's just kind of another fork in the road here where we have to make a decision of, do I want to force users into using Sharphound or creds? And well, if it's DACL, they have to have creds for generic, right? Anyways, right? For using a tool like Bloody AD, you need to have both the principal and the target, like the principal creds. I don't know if principal is the right word, but essentially the compromised user creds, you need those in order to perform the DACL attack to the target user. So I guess it makes it easy. So I guess we have to do some sort of creds. So we could do a couple different things. We could do, like, we could do PowerShell history. PowerShell history is a good one. Kind of boring, but for beginner level, I think PowerShell history makes sense. Like honestly, we could probably show the login. So to get creds, we can probably change to pipe. PowerShell history showing workstation 01 login, right? To get that impersonation token, we need to log into the machine. I think that it's perfectly reasonable to assume Alice did it through the command line. So we can just have Alice's plain text credentials in PowerShell history. Or, let's see, what else can we do? Again, I think I want this to be beginner level, so PowerShell history is a really good one for beginners. We could do we could do like some sort of backup, or we could do like a custom application, like maybe Alice has some access to some custom application. Not sure. I think PowerShell history is the easiest. I think we'll stick with that for now. So we'll assume PowerShell history for now. But if you guys have any other ideas that I think make sense, I am open to change. Again, we're building this together. It is your box as much as it is mine. So let's go back over here. So we figured out we want to somehow expose Alice's credentials so that we can grab bloodhound information. Once we grab bloodhound information using a remote tool, we can see that Alice has DACL, generic write, onto Billy, and simply change Billy's password or do any other generic write upon him and log in as Billy, and he's a DA, and that's pretty much the box. So I think I'm happy with this. I think this is a really good start, and I think we are we successfully completed this here step 1. Boom. And I think that's where I'm gonna call it for the stream today. I want to keep these streams relatively short. I'll just full screen here. Yeah, I want to keep the streams relatively short, just because I don't want to bore you guys with hour-and-a-half long stream, right? Hour-and-a-half, 2-hour long streams of just mapping out. I think for the next part 2, and maybe if this becomes a part 3, that's when we're actually going to do the configuration. That's when the fun stuff actually starts happening. So make sure you tune in whenever that'll be, probably next week again, either Thursday or Friday next week, where I will run another stream. We're going to actually start making this plan, this written out plan, a reality on some VMs. So hopefully you enjoyed it. Any other questions before we head off into the abyss and until I see you guys again? I haven't drank water in ages. All right. Well, that'll be it for me. Thank you guys for tuning in. Appreciate it a ton. Come back next week. A new video will be posted either Friday or Saturday. I don't know if you guys caught it last stream, but Ethan was in here, and Ethan was talking about how he was really unorganized in his OSCP studies. So if you find yourself in the same situation studying for all these interactive tests and practical exams that have a lot of machines, have a lot of things to keep track of, make sure you tune into that next video. Again, coming out Friday or Saturday this week. Enable Alice's webcam and see that they have a sticky note with a password on their laptop. Not sure if that's possible to configure in the lab. That is a great idea. I actually love that because I've seen that option in Metasploit a lot. Like, hey, you can enable this user's webcam. And I've never used it, but I've always been curious. That's a great idea. I may build an entirely different lab around that concept of like Metasploit or Meterpreter commands that just don't get used. But I actually love that idea. Perhaps for another box another time. But that is that's a great idea, Lipsis. Keep them coming. That's great. Anyway, that's gonna be it for me. Thank you guys for coming out and hanging out. Check out the video tomorrow or Saturday, and I will see you guys all next week. Goodbye.